Welcome back to Galaxy Recaps. Today we'll be diving into an action thriller film titled The Accountant. Enjoy the recap. The film opens with a couple bringing their son Chris to a center specializing in children with autism, desperate for answers and understanding. They explain that due to the husband's military career, they frequently relocate, which has made life challenging for Chris. The center's director suggests that Chris might benefit from living at the center full-time. However, the husband firmly declines, believing that Chris needs to face and adapt to the things that distress him, as it's a crucial part of life. In the waiting room, Chris, immersed in his own world, recites nursery rhymes while working on a puzzle. He gets to the last piece, but it's missing, leading to a frustrated outburst. A young girl notices and hands him the missing piece, instantly calming him. Fast forward to the present day. Chris is now an accountant. He's in a meeting with a couple struggling with their finances, offering them strategic tax advice. Grateful for his help, the husband invites Chris to use their property for shooting and target practice whenever he likes. Meanwhile, at the United States Treasury, Director Cain calls in an analyst named Medina. He praises her past accomplishments but questions why she hasn't advanced further. When Medina expresses contentment with her current role, Cain doesn't buy it. He confronts her with details from her past, including arrest records, and reminds her that lying on a federal job application is a serious offense, one that should have barred her from her current position. Cain gives Medina an ultimatum. To keep her job, she must track down the identity of a mysterious figure known only as the Accountant, a man infamous for laundering money for criminals and having a lethal reputation. Medina has a month to crack the case or face unemployment. Back at his home, Chris follows a rigid routine. He prepares his meal and, before bed, subjects himself to a harsh ritual. He turns on strobe lights, blasts heavy metal music, and rubs a wooden rod against his shins, inflicting pain. Memories of his mother abandoning him during a childhood Christmas flood his mind. After taking his medication, Chris finally finds sleep. Later, Chris heads to his client's property for some shooting practice. The man is visibly impressed by Chris's exceptional marksmanship. Afterward, Chris drives to a storage unit where he keeps a hidden trailer. Inside, it's like a secret vault filled with valuable collector's items, rare paintings, and stacks of money in various currencies. The trailer also houses an extensive collection of weapons. Lying on his bed, Chris's thoughts drift back to his time in prison, where a fellow inmate became his mentor. This man taught Chris a range of skills and eventually set him up in his current line of work, handling money for dangerous criminals. Chris is jolted awake by the ringing of his phone. He answers, and on the other end is a British woman who works for him. She advises Chris to start taking on more conventional clients, expressing concern that people are beginning to notice him. Though annoyed, Chris reluctantly agrees to heed her advice. He then heads to a meeting with his new clients, who run a robotics prosthetics company. One of the company's in-house accountants has discovered that someone is embezzling funds, and they want Chris to investigate and uncover the culprit. Chris accepts the job, assuring them that he'll start the next day. Meanwhile, Medina is hard at work examining the photos she has of the accountant. One picture shows a partial view of his face, so she crops the image and sends it to the facial recognition department for further analysis. In another part of the world, we meet Brax, a notorious enforcer who holds businessmen accountable for money laundering. In a parking garage in Switzerland, Brax enters a man's car, pointing a gun at his head. He demands that the man stop shorting other companies. Though Brax resorts to violence to make his point, the man eventually agrees, and Brax leaves. Back at the robotics company, Chris enters the conference room, which he's been given to use for his investigation. He finds a woman asleep at the table and awkwardly wakes her. She introduces herself as Dana, the one who initially discovered the missing money. After briefing Chris on the situation, Dana assumes they'll be working together, but Chris quickly makes it clear that he prefers to work alone. After Dana exits the conference room, Chris immerses himself in the investigation. Meanwhile, Medina receives a call from Homeland Security about her facial recognition request. They've identified an audio recording from one of the accountant's attacks. It captures the terrified pleas of a man moments before the accountant kills him. Later, during lunch, Dana joins Chris and tries to strike up a conversation. Chris attempts to engage, but it's clear that socializing doesn't come easily to him. Dana shares a personal story about her father and how his influence led her to become an accountant. After the conversation, Chris returns to the conference room, and we get a glimpse of his genius at work. He begins filling the whiteboard with complex equations, continuing onto the surrounding windows when he runs out of space. The entire room is soon covered in his calculations, leading to a breakthrough. At home, Medina obsessively listens to the audio file, using her technology to isolate the accountant's voice. She finally catches something crucial: Chris repeating a nursery rhyme to himself. Back at the conference room, Chris excitedly shows Dana his findings. He reveals that he has discovered a financial leak. Someone is funneling money into a non-existent company. Just as they're discussing this, one of the company's shareholders interrupts, eager for answers. However, Chris calmly informs her that he isn't ready to draw any definitive conclusions yet, and needs more time to confirm the identity of the person behind the embezzlement. In the dead of night, Brax pays a visit to one of the shareholders of the robotics company at his home. With chilling calmness, he orders the man to retrieve insulin from the fridge and place it on the table. Brax gives him a grim choice: inject himself with the insulin to stage a death, allowing his wife to collect the life insurance, or resist, in which case Brax will kill both him and his wife. Terrified, the man chooses to inject himself. The next morning, Chris arrives at the conference room only to find people erasing his work from the windows. He quickly orders them to stop. Just then, the company owner walks in, somberly informing Chris that his best friend, the shareholder, deleted himself the previous night out of guilt for embezzling money from the company. The owner insists that Chris stop the investigation. Disappointed and frustrated that he couldn't complete his work, Chris leaves, feeling a deep sense of failure. Back home, Chris channels his frustration into a brutal session of self-injury, beating his shins with a wooden rod while blasting heavy metal music and turning on strobe lights. Memories of his mother abandoning the family flash through his mind. In a fit of rage, he breaks the rod over his shin and throws his medication across the room. Eventually, Chris calms down, takes his medication, and collapses into bed. The following morning, as Chris exits his house, he notices someone tailing him. Sensing danger, he heads to his client's property for shooting practice. His mind drifts back to his childhood, recalling the harsh training sessions he endured with his brother Brax under a brutal trainer hired by their father. The trainer's beatings left them battered and bruised. Meanwhile, inside the house, Chris's clients are being held hostage by a group of thugs. They force the wife to go outside and call Chris in, hoping to lure him into a trap. But Chris is one step ahead. He shoots one of the thugs from the yard. The remaining thug forces the couple into their truck and attempts to flee, but Chris takes precise aim, disabling the truck. He drags the thug out of the vehicle and strangles him with his belt, ending his life before leaving the property. Realizing Dana is in danger, Chris rushes to her apartment. As Dana arrives at her complex, a man follows her inside. Chris arrives just in time to see them enter the elevator together. Sneaking in through the back, Chris takes the stairs while Dana reaches her apartment, where two delivery men claim they have a package for her. They force their way in and try to subdue her, but Dana fights back, managing to hide in the bathroom. Chris bursts into the apartment, swiftly taking down the two attackers. He then tells a shaken Dana to come with him. Meanwhile, Brax receives a call informing him that his men have been killed by the accountant. With Dana in tow, Chris heads to his hidden trailer. As Dana steps inside Chris's trailer, her eyes widen at the sight of the piles of money and the arsenal of weapons. She questions him about what she's seeing, but Chris struggles to give her any direct answers, clearly uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Medina receives a call from language services regarding the audio file she sent them. They inform her that the man she's looking for might be a victim of childhood abuse or could have a neurological disorder that causes him to chant nursery rhymes under stress. Determined, Medina heads to the IRS offices, collaborating with an employee to cross-reference the accountant's aliases with individuals who have high incomes. Chris, trying to keep Dana safe, takes her to a fancy hotel to hide out. During their stay, Dana presses him about his impressive fighting skills. Chris explains that his father, who was in the army, trained him rigorously to ensure he could stand up to bullies. He also reveals that he has autism, making it challenging for him to socialize, even though he genuinely wants to connect with others. In the middle of their conversation, Chris has a sudden realization about the robotics case. Someone has been channeling money out of the company only to reinvest it, creating even higher profits. Later, Chris tails Brax down a street, but Brax quickly notices and fires at him. Undeterred, Chris follows him into a hotel room, only to find that one of the company's shareholders has been murdered. Meanwhile, Medina, working with the IRS employee, uncovers the true identity of the accountant, Chris. They discover that he works at a small accounting firm, strategically located in a building connected to several cash-based businesses that he owns and uses to hide his real income. Medina reports this information to Cain, adding that most of the money Chris earns is donated to organizations conducting research in neuroscience. When Chris returns to the hotel, he finds Dana asleep on the couch. He's hit by a flashback of his father forcing him and his brother to brutally retaliate against a group of kids who had bullied him at school earlier that day. Realizing that it's too dangerous to keep Dana involved, Chris quietly packs his belongings and leaves, deciding it's best to distance her from the situation. At the same time, Cain and Medina lead a team of detectives through Chris's residence, noting his peculiar living habits. They discover a vast collection of untraceable weapons and an advanced security system, indicating just how prepared Chris is for any situation. Brax, hired by the owner of the robotics company, is tasked with installing surveillance cameras throughout his home, fearing that Chris might come after him. Later, Cain dismisses the other detectives, leaving him alone with Medina to discuss the case. Cain opens up about his long-standing efforts to track down the accountant and the numerous obstacles he has faced. He reveals that he was present at the hotel where the recording of Chris was made and that he personally overheard Chris killing the man. After confronting Cain, Chris held him at gunpoint and asked a deeply personal question. "Were you a good father?" When Cain responded with a hesitant yes, Chris chose to let him go. Shortly afterward, Chris received a call from a woman with a British accent, providing information about an upcoming illegal transaction. This call reignited his determination to continue his work as an investigator, using the woman as his informant. Cain later met with Chris's former cellmate, who had turned government informant after his release. However, the criminals the cellmate once associated with eventually tracked him down, subjected him to brutal torture, and killed him. The news of his cellmate's death caused Chris to have a breakdown, leading him to escape from prison. Chris then attended his mother's funeral alongside his father. However, when they were asked to leave, Chris had a meltdown. In the chaos, a security officer fired a shot at Chris, but his father heroically jumped in front of the bullet, sacrificing his life to save his son. Back in the present, Medina questions Cain about why he's revealing all this to her. Cain explains that he wants her to be the one to answer the phone after he retires in 7 months. The phone in Chris's house suddenly rings, and Medina answers it. On the other end is the same British woman, providing a tip about the robotics company. At the mansion of the robotics company's owner, Brax is on high alert as Chris stealthily makes his way onto the property. Brax sends out his henchmen to eliminate Chris, but one by one Chris takes them down, sparing only one to interrogate about the layout of the house. Brax watches through the security cameras as Chris fights his way through the mansion, attempting to guide his men on how to stop Chris. Despite sustaining several injuries, Chris manages to defeat all of Brax's men. As Chris enters the house, Brax watches the security footage more closely and comes to a shocking realization. Chris is his long-lost brother. In a moment of recognition, Brax orders his remaining men to stand down and prepares to confront Chris himself. At first, Brax is furious with Chris for disappearing from his life for over a decade. He's particularly upset that Chris attended their mother's funeral without him, and blames him for their father's death. Overwhelmed with anger, Brax lashes out at Chris, who, in a rare moment of vulnerability, allows his brother to vent his rage. However, Chris soon takes control of the situation, holding Brax at gunpoint until he calms down. After the tension subsides, the two brothers reconcile, making amends for the years of separation and misunderstanding. As they finish their conversation, the company owner bursts into the room, enraged that Brax hasn't dealt with Chris yet. Without a second thought, Chris shoots the owner, ending the threat. He then turns back to Brax and they continue their conversation. Before parting ways, Chris suggests they meet up in a week to catch up, signaling a hopeful future for their relationship. Meanwhile, at a neuroscience center, a couple arrives seeking advice for their autistic son. As they speak with the staff, the boy wanders into a room and encounters Justine, the center's director's daughter. She was the same little girl who had helped Chris with his puzzle many years ago. Justine is nonverbal but communicates through an advanced computer. The voice that comes from the computer is revealed to be the same British woman who has been working with Chris all along. Back at Dana's apartment, she is tidying up when a delivery arrives. It's a painting, and as she examines it more closely, she realizes it's not just any artwork. She carefully removes the outer layer to reveal a very expensive painting she recognizes from Chris's trailer. leaving her with a sense of awe and curiosity about who Chris really is. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.